Well, we had our second outdoor mass last night, and I'm fairly confident it's the first time that I've actually had sandals on during this gospel. So I was pretty excited about that. We're called to have sandals, right? Jesus said to wear sandals. So way to go, those of you who have sandals. So you're very holy today. But we remember this instruction as Jesus is sending out his apostles, kind of this trial run while he's still around. This isn't the Great Commissioning. This isn't the technical birth of the church from Pentecost and beyond, but them getting used to the call to go out and bring his love and his truth to the world. And so there are obviously valuable lessons that he's trying to teach them. And not that we take these things literally, like wearing our sandals, but there are messages there. The one that says, don't take anything with you besides a few of those items. Depend on me. There's a simplicity of a call to simplicity, but a dependence on God to provide, a true trust. And that this isn't about you and your work. This is me working through you, so you have to give it all to me. Trust in me. And then there's also this sense of not going from one house to the other. And part of that was sometimes the kind of standard of that time was that these preachers or those who would bring, prophetic messages to the communities might go from community to community or from house to house to kind of be paid and accumulate wealth. And so a part of this is too, Jesus saying, this isn't about material gain or advancing your place in society. This is because it's the truth and you're called to live it and to share it and to bring that love. So 2 parts of the lesson. But the other part that strikes us, the most kind of probably visual part of the instruction is, hey, if they don't receive your message, shake the dust from your feet, from those houses, from those towns. And there's a few things we could take from that. One that I'd like to focus on a little bit more. Certainly part of it was just a sense of condemnation, a sense of you have not embraced what you're supposed to. And, hopefully part of that is to wake them up, to get them to know that this is serious. So that's certainly part of it. But another element to this is taking from the Jewish tradition, where the Jewish people would literally, when they were coming from Gentile places or had to travel through Gentile territory that hadn't been consecrated by God, the Jewish God, of course, the God of Israel, in the ways that the Jewish people were very particular about consecrating, setting things aside, keeping things pure, they would shake the dust from their very feet as a way of not wanting to be contaminated. Now, yes, there were extreme elements of this with the Jewish people, but the instinct is somewhat still worthy of consideration. Yes, we know Jesus would help them to see this. You shouldn't be separating the sick because they're spiritually, sinners, or the things that some of these extreme expressions. But nonetheless, I think that lesson we can learn from this, our Jewish tradition, the Jewish tradition, is not to take too lightly the contamination that can come from this broken, world that is under the reign of Satan, right? I mean, we know that God has given Satan that ability here on earth to have some control and power. And so we can't allow ourselves, we have to be careful not to allow ourselves to become too immersed in the things of this world that are broken. And so this is the constant challenge we have as Catholics and Christians, to be of the world, to be leaven for the world, to be agents of transformation for the world, but not to assimilate so much that we become contaminated by the world, that we now become separated from God, that we lose this grace and this gift of the Spirit that's been given to us, that we have to be careful we don't let, again, become contaminated. So we're not called to be spiritual isolationists where we completely separate ourselves from the world because we don't want to be contaminated, but we also cannot be spiritual assimilators, whatever the word that I should be using there, where we become so entrenched in the world that we become contaminated spiritually. So, the image that came to me this week in praying with this image of shaking the dust was I just recently, in the last couple of months, had a chance in the rectory. We watched an HBO series called Chernobyl. It was out maybe 5-6 years ago about the nuclear plant, meltdown in Russia in the 1980s. It was fascinating to see, A, the crisis that it was, but B, the contamination of the radiation and the precautions that they had to go through, and sadly, the people that were exposed, and the breadth of that contamination. The suggestion was that the things that happened, one of the reactors exploded, and they said that it still had an impact 25, 30 years later of the dust of the radiation still being in the atmosphere, reaching all the way to like Scandinavia from Russia. Really remarkable. And I remember one scene where they were trying to deal with the cleanup. And again, at first it was very chaotic. Within 36 hours, the one town had to be completely evacuated within 30 miles. And they've never really completely settled it since then. There's still an isolation zone there that people are allowed to go into, but they're encouraged not to. But anyway, the one scene, they were trying to remove these radioactive materials from a roof. And I in some of the research, it sounds like some of these things were fairly accurate. They had to suit up the workers going out there, and they would run out to the roof, again, which had particular exposure. They would have like 90 seconds to do their work, and then a bell would ring or a siren would go off, and they'd have to run back to the refuge of the building or wherever that was protected, and then another group would go out. Just insane. So, of course, they created drama by having one guy trip, and, you didn't know if he got his foot stuck and all this kind of stuff. But this idea that gave me that image of kind of the spiritual, or this contamination, again, of this world that is broken, the sin, the spirits that aren't of God, that can that we don't even know are there. That was another piece to that radiation. People were being affected that didn't even know it. And even beyond, obviously, that time frame. And I think spiritually, that's the way things can happen. When we become too immersed in this world, we can kind of build up that contamination dust of spiritual things, the sin, and again, the spirits that aren't of God, this broken world that we know it has darkness and is capable of evil, that can kind of, settle on us and start to become destructive. And so this idea of, I kind of had this idea of Mass as we are reopening things, and the diocese is now talking about, and the U.S. bishops going through as a Catholic Church throughout our country, kind of a renewal in our appreciation of Mass and the Eucharist and all that it is, as we're coming back and as we've had this time of kind of having to deal with doing Mass in different ways or being away from it. But I had this image of that's kind of like our weekly experience, this refuge of the church and the sacraments, our life of prayer, where we are cleansed, where we are purified, where we are made new in the grace of Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit. And then we kind of go out into the world, and, we have this time to try to be effective in helping clean it and helping renew it and helping it bring new life of Jesus Christ to the world. But then this kind of urgency to come back, that the bell rings of the bells of the church every Sunday to say, okay, we got to come back. We got to be cleansed. We got to be decontaminated spiritually, so that we make sure we're staying in the right place, that God is at the center of everything, that we're not becoming too consumed by the things of this world, some of the things that can be good even, but things that are not good or even evil, and certainly of our sin, and this need to constantly be cleansed. It was fascinating to look up some of the things. I was looking up decontamination, and they actually said that they had personal things that you could decontaminate at home if you get exposed. I don't know if anybody does this, but so they were talking about removing your clothes, but making sure that you don't do it too aggressively because, again, that radioactive dust that you don't want to spread. They talked about taking a hot shower, hot water and soap, use shampoo, but don't use conditioner. So if you're radioactive and you're looking to clean up, you're not supposed to use conditioner. I was fascinated by that because it like makes it cling to you or something. I don't know. But anyway, that's the only thing you guys are going to take from this whole homily now, right? So don't use conditioner if you're decontaminating from radioactive material. Okay, but nonetheless, so this is how we decontaminate. This is how we're renewed and cleansed. And I think that urgency of the need to not take lightly how this world can impact us when we don't have that renewal. That's why the church says we got to do this every week. Imagine if those people didn't take the precautions of wearing the suits and coming back inside. If they just said, hey, you know what? I'm going to hang out on the roof and I'll just do this for 7 hours today. Wouldn't have gone well for them. But we're tempted to do that spiritually and in our own lives to kind of say, I'm good. I'm good. I don't see the effects. I'm fine. We don't realize the spiritual damage that's happening, I think, even amidst, just our daily lives and the things we're exposed to. And again, the sin that we're around or that we are involved in ourselves. So let's appreciate this. Let's renew that sense of urgency of coming to this place of spiritual decontamination and renewal. What a gift it is that we have it, that we have this refuge and this gift. And let it bring us peace, confidence in going out into the world, but never losing sight of who the source of everything that we are, the one who keeps us in the right place, and keeps us in that right, proper, pure place with our God and relationship with Him, which is the grace of all that we do every Sunday when we gather at church, the grace of the sacraments, our own prayer life, to find great refuge in them and confidence as we continue to engage and allow God to transform the world through us, His church.